Melissa sat at the kitchen table, staring at the untouched cup of coffee in front of her. The clock on the wall ticked softly, filling the silence that had become too familiar in her home. It was almost midnight, and her husband Ethan was upstairs, fast asleep. The house was warm, but she felt cold inside. Like a part of her had slowly gone quiet over the years. Ethan had been working long hours lately. He was a kind man, but the closeness they once shared had faded into routine. They didn't fight, they didn't argue. They just existed side by side, like two quiet strangers sharing the same space. Melissa missed the spark they once had, the small things he used to do, holding her hand for no reason, laughing at her jokes, or simply asking how she felt. Those things had stopped, replaced by silence and the glow of his phone before bed. Tonight, his two college friends, Liam and Derek, were staying over for the weekend. They had come from out of town, and their visit was supposed to be cheerful, a chance for Ethan to catch up with his old buddies. The evening started light and full of laughter. The men had brought old photos, retelling college stories over dinner. Melissa enjoyed hearing them talk. It was the most laughter she'd heard in the house in months. For a while, it almost felt alive again. But as the night went on, Ethan's energy faded. He yawned halfway through a story and finally said he was heading to bed. "You all carry on," he said with a smile, patting Melissa's shoulder before disappearing upstairs. His voice was gentle but distant. Melissa stood in the doorway, unsure whether to follow him or stay. The sound of his footsteps faded, replaced by the faint hum of the refrigerator and the laughter of Liam and Derek in the living room. For a moment, she thought of cleaning up, turning off the lights, and going to bed too. But something in their easy voices made her pause. She glanced at her reflection in the kitchen window. Her eyes looked tired, her hair a little messy from the long day. Yet there was something else there too, a quiet ache she hadn't admitted to anyone. She missed being part of something light and joyful. She missed being seen when she walked back into the living room. Derek looked up from the couch. "You're still awake," he said with a grin. "We thought you escaped." Melissa smiled, shaking her head. "Not yet. I couldn't sleep." Liam, sitting across from him, motioned for her to join them. "Come on, we're just talking about the old days. You might enjoy hearing the embarrassing stuff Ethan did in college." She sat down, tucking one leg under her. "Oh, I'm sure there's plenty," she said. The conversation flowed easily. They told stories of late-night pizza runs, failed dates, and road trips gone wrong. Melissa laughed so hard that her cheeks hurt. For the first time in a long while, she felt relaxed, even happy. Liam's calm presence made her comfortable. He spoke softly, choosing his words with care. Derek was the opposite, loud and full of life, always ready with a joke or a teasing comment as the clock crept toward midnight. Melissa noticed how natural it felt sitting there with them. The room was softly lit by a floor lamp, casting warm shadows across the walls. Rain began tapping on the windows, creating a gentle rhythm that filled the pauses between laughter. Derek leaned back on the couch. "It's weird, you know," he said. "When we were in college, we thought life would be exciting forever. Then real life happens." Melissa nodded slowly. "Yeah, real life can be quiet. Too quiet sometimes." Liam looked at her then, really looked, his eyes soft but serious. "Quiet can be good," he said, "but it can also make people feel invisible." His words struck her deeper than she expected. Invisible. That was exactly it. She felt like she'd been fading for years, doing everything right. Keeping the house clean, remembering birthdays, smiling through exhaustion, but somewhere along the way, she had disappeared behind the version of herself everyone else needed. Derek changed the subject, asking her about her work and hobbies. She admitted she had stopped painting, something she once loved. "I used to paint every week," she said, her voice trailing off. "Now the brushes just sit in a drawer." "Then maybe it's time to take them out again," Liam said gently. "You're still that person, Melissa. You just forgot for a while." The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. No one had spoken to her like that in years. Ethan wasn't unkind. He was just busy, tired, distracted. But in that moment, she realized how long it had been since anyone had really seen her. The night grew deeper. The rain outside turned into a soft drizzle. The air felt thick with something unspoken, not attraction. Not yet, but a quiet connection between three people who were each missing something. Melissa laughed again when Derek tried to mimic Ethan's old college haircut. Her laughter was soft but genuine. He really wore it like that? She asked, covering her mouth. Oh, it was worse, Derek said, pulling out his phone. Here, look. The picture made her laugh even harder, tears forming in her eyes. It was a small thing, but in that laughter, she felt something return to her, something she hadn't realized she'd lost. She wasn't just a wife or a caretaker in that moment. She was herself again, a woman with dreams, with memories, with a heart that still beat fast when someone noticed her smile. As the clock struck 1, Liam yawned and stretched. We should probably let you rest, he said softly. It's late. Melissa hesitated, not wanting the night to end. Yeah, I guess so. She stood, smoothing her sweater, but before heading upstairs, she turned back to them. Thanks for staying up, she said quietly. I didn't realize how much I needed company tonight. Liam smiled kindly. Anytime, Melissa. The next morning felt strangely quiet. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, soft and golden, touching everything with a sense of calm. Melissa woke before Ethan. He was still asleep beside her, his breathing steady, his arm resting carelessly across the blanket. She lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling, trying to quiet the thoughts from last night. Nothing wrong had happened, yet something inside her had changed. She could still hear Liam's calm voice. Derek's easy laugh trit played in her mind like a song that refused to end. When she finally went downstairs, Liam was already in the kitchen making coffee. He smiled when he saw her. Morning, he said, his voice low and friendly. Good morning, she replied, brushing her hair behind her ear. You're up early? Couldn't sleep, he said, pouring her a cup. Jet lag, maybe? Or maybe I just like quiet mornings. Melissa smiled. Same here. They stood there for a moment, sipping coffee, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator. There was something peaceful about it, no noise, no rush, no expectations. Just two people standing in the stillness of an early morning dot. Derek appeared soon after, looking half awake, his hair messy. Please tell me someone made breakfast, he groaned. Liam laughed. We were just starting coffee. You're on pancake duty. Figures, Derek muttered, but he smiled as he reached for the pan. It felt surprisingly natural. The three of them in that kitchen. Melissa hadn't had a morning like that in years, filled with easy talk, laughter, and a sense of belonging. Even though Ethan eventually came downstairs, yawning and distracted. The energy between them all stayed warm and light. By afternoon, Ethan had to leave for a few hours to handle a work issue. I'll be back before dinner, he said, giving Melissa a quick kiss on the cheek. It was brief, automatic. Then he was gone. For a while, Melissa cleaned up the kitchen while Liam and Derek sat on the back porch talking. The day was bright but cool, the kind of weather that begged for conversation. Eventually, she joined them outside, bringing lemonade. Derek leaned back in his chair. You really made this place nice, Melissa. Feels like home. She smiled softly. Thank you. It took a while, but I love this house. Liam nodded. You can tell. There's care in everything here. They talked about small things, travel, family, old friends. But the more they spoke, the deeper it went. Derek had gone through a divorce 2 years ago. Liam was still single, saying he never found the right person. When he said that, his eyes flickered toward Melissa for just a moment. Gentle, not bold. But enough for her to feel something stir. The conversation turned more personal. You two seem like you've got it all figured out, Derek said. A nice house, good jobs, marriage that's lasted this long. That's rare. Melissa hesitated, looking down at her glass. It's not as perfect as it looks, she admitted quietly. Ethan and I, we've been distant. Life gets busy. You forget how to talk sometimes. Neither of the men spoke right away. The wind rustled the trees, carrying the faint smell of cut grass. Liam finally said, it's easy to lose connection when everything becomes about what's next. Bills, work, schedules. You start living beside someone instead of with them. His words felt too close to her truth. She nodded slowly. Exactly. Derek broke the heaviness with a grin. You need a vacation. Somewhere sunny, no emails, no alarms. Melissa laughed, shaking her head. That would be nice. Promise me you'll take one, Liam said softly, even if it's just a day for yourself. Something in the way he said it calm, sincere made her heart tighten. She hadn't taken a day just for herself in years. She wasn't even sure she knew how anymore. As the afternoon light shifted, they moved back inside. Derek started playing old songs on his phone, and soon the three of them were reminiscing again. The house, usually quiet and serious, now felt alive with warmth. Melissa noticed how easy it was to laugh around them. They didn't make her feel small or unseen. They treated her like S. The next day felt different, heavier somehow. The house was full of noise, coffee cups clinking, the smell of breakfast. Light conversation, but under it all, there was something quiet and unspoken. Melissa felt it the moment she came downstairs. Liam greeted her with his usual calm smile, but his eyes lingered for a second too long. Derek was cheerful, joking as always. But even he seemed to sense that the air had changed. Ethan had gone out early to run errands. He left a quick note on the counter saying he'd be gone most of the day. Melissa read it twice, her chest tightening without knowing why. She wasn't angry. She was just disappointed. He hadn't even said goodbye. The three of them sat outside on the porch again. The sky was overcast, the air cool. Liam talked about his job. Derek told another funny story, and Melissa laughed, but her heart wasn't fully in it. Every time she looked at Liam, she felt that strange pull, the same quiet connection that had started the night before. After lunch, Derek got a call from an old friend and went upstairs to take it. Melissa and Liam stayed in the kitchen clearing the dishes. For a while, they didn't speak. The only sound was the soft splash of water as she washed the plates. Finally, Liam said, "You seem distant today." She smiled faintly. "Just thinking." "About?" he asked, drying a plate. She hesitated. "About how easy it is to forget yourself when life keeps you busy. You wake up one day and realize you don't even recognize who you've become." Liam leaned against the counter, looking at her. "You're still the same person, Melissa. Maybe just buried under too much responsibility." She gave a small laugh. "That's a nice thought." "It's not just a thought," he said softly. "You still have that spark. I see it." Her hands stopped moving. She stared at the water for a long moment, unsure what to say. No one had said something like that to her in years. Not even Ethan. When she turned to face Liam, his expression wasn't bold or inappropriate. Was gentle, almost sad. There was no pressure, no expectation, just understanding. That made it even harder to look away. "I don't know what you're trying to say," she whispered. "I'm not trying to say anything," he replied. "I just think you deserve to feel noticed." Her heart raced. It wasn't attraction alone. Was recognition, something emotional and deep that came from being unseen for too long. For a moment, she thought about stepping back, putting distance between them. But she didn't move. Then Derek's laughter echoed from upstairs, breaking the stillness. The moment faded, like a wave pulling back from the shore. Melissa quickly turned back to the sink, pretending to be busy. Liam smiled softly, picking up another towel. "Guess I'm not much help," he said, his voice lighter now. She smiled too, though her hands trembled slightly. "You're fine." When Derek came back down, everything felt normal again, or at least they all pretended it did. He started telling jokes, playing music from his phone, and soon the room was filled with sound again. But underneath it all, Melissa could still feel that quiet electricity. Lingering between her and Liam, that evening the weather turned stormy. Rain pounded against the windows, wind rattled the trees outside. Ethan called to say he'd be late again, another work issue. Melissa hung up the phone slowly, staring at the floor. She wanted to be understanding, but all she felt was emptiness. Liam noticed the look on her face when she returned to the living room. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yeah," she said quietly. "He's just busy." He nodded. He's lucky to have someone patient. Patience doesn't always feel like a gift, she murmured. Derek, sitting nearby, sensed the tone and tried to lighten it. All right, serious talk over, he said. Let's make this night memorable before we all go our separate ways tomorrow. They agreed to watch an old movie, something funny and easy. The living room lights were dim, the air warm. Melissa sat between them on the couch. The movie played, but her mind drifted. Ethan's laughter used to fill these nights. Now, the space beside her felt cold. Halfway through, Derek dozed off, his head tilted back, light snores escaping. Liam and Melissa shared a quiet smile. He never changes, Liam whispered. Never, she replied softly. For a while, neither spoke. The movie flickered across their faces, casting soft light and shadow. Melissa felt aware of everything, the rhythm of her heartbeat. The rain outside, the warmth of being seen. Liam turned slightly toward her. Melissa, he said, his tone gentle. Can I ask you something? Sure. Are you happy? The question caught her off guard. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Happy? She wasn't miserable, but she wasn't happy either. She was just existing, doing what was expected, day after day. I don't know, she admitted quietly. I used to be. He nodded slowly. You deserve to be again. His words hung in the air, simple but heavy. For a moment, Melissa felt tears threaten, but she blinked them back. Sometimes it's not that easy, she whispered. I know, he said. But it starts with remembering you still can be. Their eyes met for a long moment. Nothing was said, but everything was understood. It wasn't about desire, it was about connection, empathy. Being seen for who she was beneath the silence. Then a noise from upstairs startled Ethan had come home. They heard the faint sound of the door closing, his footsteps on the stairs. Melissa quickly sat back, creating space. Liam looked away, guilt flickering in his expression even though nothing had happened. When Ethan appeared in the hallway, he smiled sleepily. You're still awake. Yeah, just watching a movie, she said, her voice steady. He nodded. All right. Don't stay up too late. As he went upstairs, the air grew heavier. Derek shifted in his sleep, still unaware. Melissa and Liam sat in silence, the movie forgotten. After a while, Liam spoke quietly. We should probably call it a night. Yes, she said, her throat tight. Good idea. She stood. But before leaving the room, she turned slightly. Liam, she said softly, thank you for listening. He gave a small, sad smile. Any time. Melissa walked upstairs slowly. Ethan was already asleep again, his steady breathing filling the room. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her reflection in the mirror across the room. Her face looked calm, but inside, her thoughts were tangled. She hadn't crossed any line, but she had stood dangerously close to one. She felt guilty and alive all at once. And that confusion made her heart ache. The next morning, the sky was clear and soft. Light spilled through the windows. The storm had passed, but inside Melissa's heart, things still felt unsettled. She woke before Ethan again. He was sleeping deeply beside her, his face calm and unbothered, unaware of the storm that had been moving quietly through her mind all night. She turned her head and looked at him for a moment, wondering when the space between them had grown so wide. There was love there still, but it had become quiet. It's like an old song she couldn't quite remember the words to. Melissa slipped out of bed and went downstairs. The house was still filled with the faint smell of coffee from last night. Liam was in the kitchen, already dressed, his bag sitting by the door. He turned when he saw her and smiled politely, though his eyes looked tired. Morning, he said softly. Morning, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The silence between them wasn't awkward, debt was heavy, full of everything they weren't going to say. She poured herself a cup of coffee, her hands trembling slightly. Derek came in soon after, yawning and rubbing his eyes. Looks like the storm's gone, he said, stretching. Perfect day for the drive back. Liam nodded. Yeah, we should hit the road soon before traffic picks up. Melissa's heart sank a little. She knew they had to leave, but she wasn't ready for it to be over for this strange. Emotional connection that had filled the emptiness in her home to just vanish. Derek, cheerful as always, tried to keep things light. Thanks for the stay, Melissa. You're a great host. And tell Ethan next time he's got to stay awake for at least one full night of stories. She smiled faintly. I will. When Derek went to grab his jacket, Liam stayed behind for a moment. He looked at her carefully, like he was memorizing her face. Thank you for everything, he said quietly. It was nice having you here, she replied. He hesitated. Melissa, about last night, she shook her head gently. You don't have to say anything. I know. He nodded, his expression soft but serious. Take care of your heart, he said finally. She swallowed hard. You too. They held each other's gaze for a second longer, both knowing that whatever had happened between them was something that couldn't be repeated or explained. It wasn't an affair, not in the way people think of one. It was something quieter, more emotional, something born from loneliness. But even that, she knew, was dangerous. Derek returned, cheerful as ever, breaking the silence. Ready, man? Yeah, Liam said. He turned back to Melissa one last time. Goodbye. She managed a small smile. Goodbye. The door closed softly behind them. She stood there for a long time, staring at the empty space they left behind. Outside, their car pulled out of the driveway, the sound of the engine fading until the street was silent again. Melissa turned back toward the kitchen. The sunlight had shifted, warming the floor tiles. The house felt too quiet now, almost painfully so. For the first time, she realized how much life those few days had brought into her home. How laughter had echoed through the rooms that had long been filled with nothing but routine and distant conversation. Ethan came downstairs a while later, still sleepy. They've gone, he asked, grabbing.